So what's up guys, it's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for the most popular and probably the best formation in FIFA 23, this being the 4-3-2-1. It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics for the defensive style, I like to have this on balance. This is because you have the greatest control of your defense, where you're able to press when you need to press, but you're also able to drop off and be a little bit more conservative when you need to be. Balance just gives you the much needed variety and control in your defense that the other settings will not give you. Now moving on to the defensive width guys, I like to have this on 40. The reason for this is we can primarily defend in a narrow and compact shape, which will stop the attacks through the middle. This is super important because this is the danger zone. But the reason we don't have the width any lower is because then we would not have enough width to cover the wings in case an opponent tries to go down there. So it's important to at least have a little bit of width so we can cover the wings as well. Now moving on to the depth, I'm kind of using it on 57 at the moment. This isn't a specific number you need to use. This is just something that's been working for me. I kind of just switched it on and it's been working. So the reason I have it on like 57 though is so our defensive line isn't too deep to the point where we're always getting pinned back and we have constant pressure on us, but at the same time it's not too high either to the point where we're always getting through ball. It seems to be like a really nice balanced defensive line which allows me to defend effectively. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I like to have this on balance. This is because it's the most consistent and controlled form of build-up, so sometimes when you want to play a little bit slower you're able to do that, and then when you want to speed it up you're also able to do that. If you use something like slow build-up or fast build-up, it's very one-dimensional and you're forced to play that style all the time because, for example, you can't play very slow with fast build-up, so balance just gives you the most control. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I like to have this on direct passing. This is because it's the most meta option you can use, where it allows you to do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. What this means is it will make your attackers bunch up against the defenders, making it very easy to do the broken mechanics of the game, and you also get the extra pass option in the box because your players are always making the movements, so you can guarantee the goals. Now moving on to the attacking width guys, I like to have this on 40. This is important because you don't want to have the width too high, otherwise this plays out more like a 4-3-3, which we don't want. If we wanted to use that, we would use a 4-3-3, but we don't want the width to be too low and too narrow either, otherwise it feels like your players are sat on top of each other, which is not good either. So we kind of want to go for something like in between, where it's neither too narrow or too wide. Now moving on to players in box guys, I like to have this on 5. This is bang in the middle. The reason for this is we can get some players into the box so we can create chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we get counter-attack, so this just seems to be nice and balanced. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. A link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the plays you want to use guys, in the striker position, because it is a one striker formation, I suggest going for a nice well-rounded striker. This is because you have to compensate for the fact that there is one striker instead of 2, so where you could get the balance between the 2 players in a 2 striker formation, you have to get that all in one player. So I suggest for going for somebody that can do a bit of everything, somebody that's got decent dribbling and shooting, somebody with a 5-star weak foot maybe, so you can shoot on either foot. It's important that you don't use a player that is too one-dimensional, otherwise you might struggle. Now moving on to the right forward and the left forward, I suggest using good winger style players. These are players that are obviously very fast and they have good dribbling capabilities, but you also want them to be able to shoot, because obviously these are like your second tier forwards. They're still going to get a lot of chances, so you're still going to want them to be able to finish off those chances. Now moving on to the left centre mid, I suggest using a more box-to-box player. So this is somebody that's going to attack and defend, so if you can get it, a high work rate is super beneficial as you get the maximum contributions in attack and defence. But if you can't get that, just make sure you have a nice well-rounded player. Now moving on to the middle centre mid guys, I suggest using a more defensive minded player. This is somebody that's going to stay back, break up the play and really add that defensive security. So if you can get it, a medium high work rate is super beneficial as you get the maximum contributions in defence and they're not too bothered about going forward, but just ensure that this player is really good defensively, otherwise you have a really imbalanced midfield. Moving on to the right centre mid guys, I suggest using an actual attacker. This is because they're not actually going to have to play as a centre mid in game, so the defensive stats aren't too important. So just go for an all-out attacker here, somebody like an Mbappe, an Alawara, and a Jairzinho, or in my case I'm just using Kai Havertz, because you can really get away with using an extra attacker here. If you feel more comfortable though using another centre mid, then that's also absolutely fine, but just remember that they're probably going to play as a right mid in game, so just be aware of that, guys. Moving on to the left back, I like to go for a more attacking minded fullback. This is somebody that's going to contribute to the attack going forward, so I make sure that they've got good attacking stats. Now in the right back position, I like to go for a more defensive minded fullback, somebody that is not as great on the ball, but somebody that is a little bit more defensively solid. That's just so I have a balance between my two fullbacks. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these need to be the meta players. You need the defenders to be fast and strong, maybe a medium high work rate, but yeah, there's honestly not too much to say about these players. Now moving on to the player instructions, guys. On the striker, I have him on stay central and mixed attack. We have him on stay central because it's important that he stays in the correct positions, especially since he's our only striker. We don't want him drifting out wide, otherwise he's never going to be where we need him to be, so stay central keeps him in position and where we need him to be. We also have him on mixed attack as it allows him to do a lot more. He gets a lot more involved in the build-up, which he would not do on other settings. For example, if you put him on getting behind, you're restricting this player to the one-dimensional runs where you're just going to have to keep through balling it to them, and that is it. When you have them on mixed attack, they get more involved in the build-up and you get a lot more out of the player, which I think is very important. Now moving on to the right forward, I have him on stay central and getting behind. Now the reason we have him on stay central is because we don't want him drifting out too wide, otherwise it feels a bit like a 4-3-3, which we don't really want. We want him to stay central so we keep the narrow shape of the formation, and it's very difficult for your opponents to defend it because it's hard to defend those narrow attacks. We also have him on getting behind, so he's always looking to make those darting runs through the defensive line and get us as many chances as possible. This is also why I have this striker on mixed attack, because sometimes he might drop a little bit deeper so this player can run in behind and then we play the ball with the striker to the right forward. Stuff like that, it works really well, guys. Moving on to the left forward, I have him on comeback on defense. Now the reason I do this is because it makes it defend in a 4-4-2. Now the reason we have it defend in a 4-4-2 is because the 4-4-2 is a much more superior defensive formation. The 4-3-2-1 obviously is very good at attacking, but defensively it's not as good because we don't have as many men in the midfield. But just by putting this forward on comeback on defense, making it a 4-4-2 in defense makes it a lot better defensively and a lot harder for your opponent to just run through you. So this player is going to play as a left mid when we don't have the ball. So moving on to the left centre mid, the more box-to-box style player, we have him on default settings and cover centre. We have him on default settings because we don't really want to restrict this player. He is a box-to-box, he has a bit of a free roll, so we let him do his own thing. The only important thing is that we have him on cover centre, so he does defend as one of the centre mids. Moving on to the middle centre mid, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back while attacking, stay on the edge of the box cross and cover centre. We have him on stay back because he is a defensive player, so we do want him to stay back. We have him on stay on the edge of the box for cross because in case he does get taken forward by the AI automatically, we're not going to want him to commit into the penalty box, we're going to want him to stay outside. And then we have him on cover centre, so he does defend as one of the centre mids in the 4-4-2 shape. Now moving on to the right centre mid where we use an actual attacker, we have him on get forward, get into the box cross and cover wing. We have him on get forward because he is an actual attacker, so we do want him to get forward. Get into the box cross means he will make the transitional runs into the penalty area. He won't be very static and we get a lot more out of him that way. And then cover wing means he's going to defend as a right mid in the 4-4-2 shape. This is why I said you don't actually have to use an actual centre mid here. Now moving on to the left back, my more attacking minded fullback, I have him on balanced attack and overlap. This is because the 4-3-2-1 is obviously a narrow formation, and sometimes we need to add extra width to the team. So by putting this player on balanced attack and overlap, he's going to go forward and he's going to make the overlapping runs, so we always have a wide option in attack. Super underrated and super important. Now moving on to the right back, my more defensive fullback, I have him on stay back while attacking and overlap. We have him on stay back, so we always at least have 3 defenders back, and then we have him on the overlap run type, so he's always looking to add a wider option if we do send him on a run forward. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these are on default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-3-2-1. If you have enjoyed, please be sure to drop a like, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day. Peace.